Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Subscribers and 6.7% subscribe-ettes. In this video, we're going to keep working on the engine, getting it ready to go in the truck. If you haven't seen the last one, it is putting the short block together. Anyways, we're going to continue putting it together. Heads, cam, all that jazz. Again, getting it ready to go in the truck. And I think at some point, since the engine harness and stuff is out of the truck and it's really easy to work on, I'm probably going to build a stand and fire this thing up on the ground to check oil pressure and all that jazz before it goes in the truck. So, follow along, and we are going to cover some of the finer details on getting this engine ready to go. Alright, so first things first, the oil pump. It looks like it's in pretty good shape. I pulled the gears out of it. There's minimal scoring on the faces, and I'll show you what you want to look for. This area right here, you can see there's one scratch, but it's not just really tore up. So we're going to stick with that. We're going to call that good, and we're going to continue to use it. Now, one thing to keep an eye on is on this particular hole right here. This is the bypass valve, which is, let's see if I can get this right, located right inside of here. Now you can do one of two things. You can take it out, or you can just inspect its operation. Now the way you do that is take this little bent pick, and I'm going to put it down inside of there, and I don't know if you can see that or not. But what I'm looking for, if you'll look right here in front of my finger, is for that valve to move freely. Okay? And I think you can see it. Yeah, it moves pretty easily. The bypass valve, I got my own opinions about that thing. I think the factory does it for a couple of different reasons. One is for customers who like to see that steady oil pressure gauge, and the reason I say that is because if the oil pump makes a certain amount of pressure, the bypass valve opens and the pressure stays at a certain point. So like on cold mornings, the oil pressure won't go through the roof, and the customer won't call the dealership and say, my oil pressure is too high, my shit's going to blow up. That's what I think it is. It really doesn't hurt anything to have high oil pressure, especially in a hot rod. About the worst thing you got to worry about is separating the seams on the oil filter. But if you use a good oil filter, that's not really a problem. So it's cleaned up. The bypass valve works like it's supposed to, and we're just going to put it back together. No big deal. Okay, so it's time to put this thing back together. If you look at the ring, now this is a stock oil pump. This is factory GM. And when you put this ring back in, there's a dot on it. That dot is supposed to go up. So we're going to put some engine assembly lube on the face of this thing, just in a couple of spots, and then on the exterior. Since it is going in an aluminum housing, there's always the possibility of galding and whatnot. Okay. Lube it up nice. Drop it in place. It should be reasonably tight clearance in there, and you've inspected the bore and the face for excessive wear. This one's in pretty good shape. So this gear doesn't really have a forward and a back side to it, but if you look at it, you can tell where the balancer was pressed up against it. And we're going to try to put it back together in that same manner. So a little bit of assembly lube on this one, just the same. Also on the faces. Smear it around good. Nothing to it. Last but not least, the cover plate. Same thing. You want to check the cover plate. Look for grooves or anything. This one has just very light scuff marks in it. What I would probably consider to be perfect shape. So we have enough assembly lube around this thing. You just want to make sure there's no burrs or high spots on the edge where this plate sits, because anything that holds this plate up off the oil pump is going to cause it to have oil leaks around the pump, and you don't want that. That is bad news. Now, personal preference, I put a very small drop of Loctite on the bolts in a lot of cases. Cam retainer bolts, oil pump cover bolts. Because if any of these come out, you're going to have lots of problems in a very short amount of time. Okay, after you got it all together, that pump gear should rotate freely. If you use engine assembly lubes, probably a little bit sticky on the inside. Okay, so we kind of did a little skipperoonie there. The timing chain tensioner is not the kind that I want to use, so I had to order that, and I also had to order the bolts. The bolts, since it has a 3-bolt cam gear in it now. So have to wait on that stuff to come in, so I can't put the oil pump on even though it's put together. I did get the new lifters put in and the new lifter trays and all that jazz, and the head studs are screwed in. All of these holes in the block are blind holes, meaning that they don't go down into the coolant passages, which is kind of good in this case. Just make sure that you chase the threads, clean them out, all that jazz. And when you run the studs down in there, they should not be bottomed out, at least according to ARP, from what I remember. These are not ARP studs, but nonetheless, I would say the procedure is probably still the same. I think the theory behind that is that the threads have a little bit of clearance between the stud and the block, and whenever you tighten it down, if it doesn't hit the bottom of the hole perfectly square, it can kick the stud one way or the other. Again, whether or not it makes a difference, who knows? But they're the one that make the studs, so I put them in the way they say to put them in. Chinese head studs, check. Head gaskets in place, ready to go. Make sure you put the part where it says front to the front on the gasket. Heads ready to go. And so we'll go ahead and do that. We're going to put the heads on, get them torqued down, and then we'll get the DOD delete plate put in place. Wow, that was kind of tough to say. So I've already cleaned the heads up. They're good to go. And then go ahead and slide these bad boys in place. I also want to go on record and say, or what I forgot to mention earlier, is on that oil pump, if that bypass valve does the opposite and it sticks open, the engine will have low oil pressure. So if you find a good junkyard jewel that says low oil pressure, check that first. That is the first thing that I would look for, because it does happen, especially if the engine is or has not had the oil change regularly. It is not uncommon for that bypass valve to stick open and bleed off oil pressure. Now, I think we're finally ready to torque the heads. Need to get some assembly lube on the head studs and on the nuts and get that all torqued down. All right, so it's a day or two later. I had to do the waiting game for parts and whatnot. And this is mainly what I was waiting on, the timing chain tensioner. Yeah. That. The stock one, which I'm fixing to show you here in a minute, they're bad about breaking, and this particular one wasn't broken yet, and I didn't want to be the one to find out if I did break it. So get this thing put on and we can start sealing it up, I think. Okay, this is what I was talking about. The end piece right here is normally what breaks off of these things. So rather than wait for that to happen, I went ahead and bought the one I just showed you a minute ago. So we're going to go ahead and throw that on there real quick. All right, there it is. I'll throw a link in the description for this one, because I know there's probably a few of you guys out there that are looking for something like that. All right, there's that. Let's grab the timing chain and the new ARP bolts. All right, just like any old school small block, you have to line up the dots. That's not it. All right. All right, timing marks lined up, bolts in, Loctited. I think we're pretty much ready to start sealing it up. I got to get the oil pump pickup tube cleaned up. We can go ahead and put the oil pump on, so I'll go ahead and do that real quick. And man, we're getting really close to being done with it. I'm kind of actually looking forward to that. So. All right, there's one more small hurdle taken care of. Let's see what we're gonna do next. Okay, so we're getting dangerously close to being done putting the little 5.3 that could together. The bottom end is all torqued. Windage tray is on it, oil pump's on it, timing cover's on, timing chain, all that jazz. So all that's left as far as this video is concerned is we're going to go ahead and do the rockers and the trunnions in the rockers and put the rockers on. And that'll be it. So check it out. Let's get started on that. Oh, wait, first I gotta do something real quick. Hold on. Okay, had to cut my hair real quick. Now, we're on to the last major step, which is the rocker trunnion upgrade. Sound like Barry Kripke now. Anyways, so it's a super simple process. I'm going to show you real quick on a couple of rockers how you take them apart. And it's surprisingly easy, so check it out. All right, so here's a stock rocker arm. It got soaked in some super strong degreaser, so it got a little surface rust on it, but it's not bad. So take the rocker arm, you just lay it in a socket like that. Just a simple piece of aluminum. And you hold it over the center of it like that. You smack it a few times. The old bearing and the pivot point comes out. Take that one out, and that's it. One more time. That's it. Okay, so now that we got the old rocker arms stripped, we got the old trunnions out. Now it's time to get the new ones out, and I'll show you why we even do this in the first place. All right, so the main reason we do this trunnion upgrade is that the center trunnion in the original center trunnion is a cast piece, and it doesn't have full bearing contact all the way around it, and I'm gonna show you the difference right now. So there's the original style. Come on, focus. Focus! Oh, there we go. So the original one doesn't have full bearing contact around it. And then the new one is a billet steel or a steel piece, and as you can see, all the way around the trunnion, it has contact with the bearing. That's the main thing. The bearings themselves are the same or similar design, I guess. So I'm going to show you right now how to put those together. Ideally, you would use a press to do this. Not everybody has a press, and I'm too lazy to go into the other garage and use the press. And not to mention, I think this would probably be a little bit cumbersome in a big press anyway. So here we go. Let's get a couple of these put together real quick so you can kind of see what it looks like. All right, so there's how the bearings come to you. They got a little cap in there to protect the rollers. We're just going to drop it in one side of the rocker arm. And this doesn't take much effort at all. Tap it so it starts. Take a piece of aluminum. Put it in the rocker arm until it sits flush, like that. Then you take the new trunnion, push it through so it'll push the little grease cap out, or the little protector cap. Toss that in the trash, and now it's sitting in there like that, and still has that cap left to be put on. Now they include these little spacers with the kit. So what they're for is you put it on the bottom of it so that this doesn't sit on your press. You're not pressing against it. Sit it back down on the table. You get another cup, or another bearing I should say, and you push it down with your fingers and the cap pops out. Take your piece of aluminum that you were using earlier, right over the bearing. Run it down until it stops. And you can use, at this point, I just use a 5/8 socket. Knock it down until it sits flush, just like the other side. And there you go. Now what you don't want is a whole lot of side-to-side movement. And we're going to go back and put snap rings in here also. So that's pretty much the end of it right there. I'm not going to bore you to tears and show you how to do all 16 of these things, because they're all going to be 16 times the same thing. So that's pretty much the end of it. I'll include the link in the description for those rocker trunnions in case anybody wants to use the same ones I use. They're Michigan Motorsports, so they seem to be really good quality. So that's it. We're going to get these put together, and I think that's probably all we're going to do for this video. Okay, so after doing all 16 of these rockers, I ran into a little problem a few times. And if you take these bearings and you put the bearings in all the way flush like they say, some of the rocker arms will bind up on the new trunnion. You can see it won't turn right there. The reason being is that the width of the rocker arm may not be exactly consistent with how the new trunnions are ground. So the fix for that is real simple. You just put the rocker arm back on the little washers that they give you, and I'm going to show you right now. That little washer keeps the trunnion from hitting the table. Give it a tap both directions, and now you can see the trunnion spins nice and free like it's supposed to. And it should have a small amount of side to side, which you won't be able to see in the video, but it moves back and forth a few thousandths in there, not very much. So the inside of the needle bearings can't be in constant contact with the side of the trunnion. If it is, it'll tear it up and it'll knock all the bearings out and they'll go through your motor. Not a good thing. So now that we've got all the trunnions upgraded, we checked them all in that manner. Some of them are going to feel a little looser than the others from side to side, which is fine because the rocker stands when you bolt the rocker arms down to the stands that keeps the rocker arm from moving side to side anyway. So got that all taken care of. I think we're ready to put the rocker arms on now once we do the snap rings, which I got to find my snap ring pliers first. So crowded garage problems. And here we go. Next. Alright guys, that is pretty much it for this video. The long block is complete. I went ahead and put the rockers on. I didn't record any of that. You're not going to miss anything there. There is one thing to remember though. If you're running ported heads, it is very likely that the bolt on the exhaust rocker is probably poking through into the intake runner. I think it's the exhaust rocker in the intake runner. In any event, that particular rocker bolt on every cylinder needs sealer on it because that's a likely place for a vacuum leak or for oil to run down the threads of the bolt and into the intake runner when we don't want that. So, okay, keep that in mind. But anyways, like I said, it's the end of the video. The long block is together. We're probably going to fire this thing up on the floor. I'm going to build a little run-in stand for it and do some more fun stuff like that. So be sure to give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Also, for those of you who don't know, I do have an Instagram thing. Same name, DIY_garage_TX. Be sure and follow us there for the hints, clues, tips, and tricks that are likely to be in the following videos. Anyways, thanks again, guys, for watching. I sure appreciate it, and we will see you in the next one.